According to the internet, Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the earth down, which sounds impressive until you realize the real Chuck Norris story is somehow more ridiculous than the memes. This is the story of how a soft-spoken Air Force guy from Oklahoma became the internet's unofficial emperor of testosterone. Let's rewind to 1940, Ryan, Oklahoma. Population, not many. Notable exports, even fewer. Carlos Ray Norris enters the world as the eldest of 3 boys. He'd pick up the nickname Chuck from fellow airmen during his military service, which seemed innocent enough at the time. Little did anyone know that Chuck would turn out to be the most accidentally perfect action star name in Hollywood history. Young Chuck wasn't exactly what you'd call a natural warrior. Shy kid, decent student, the kind of guy who probably got picked on more than he did any picking. Fast forward to 1958. 18-year-old Chuck joins the Air Force, gets stationed in South Korea, and serves his country like a good Oklahoma boy should. But here's where our origin story gets interesting. Chuck, as a bored American airman, discovers this thing called Tang Soo Do. Now, most guys would take up ping pong or learn to play cards better. Chuck Norris decides to dedicate his entire existence to the ancient art of organized violence. Because of course he does. But here's the thing, and this is important. Chuck Norris didn't just dabble. This man collected black belts like they were Pokemon cards. Tang Soo Do, Taekwondo, Karate, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. By the time he's done, he's basically a human Swiss Army knife of kicking. And then he starts competing. Professional karate tournaments in the 60s and 70s weren't exactly mainstream entertainment. Think underground fight club meets community theater. But Chuck Norris dominates. We're talking 6-time world middleweight karate champion, undefeated for 6 years straight. This isn't Chuck Norris facts territory. This is documented, legitimate badassery. So, by 1970, Chuck has conquered the martial arts world about as thoroughly as someone can without literally becoming a video game boss. But here's where it gets interesting. Success in competitive karate is like being the world's best professional bowler. Impressive? Absolutely. Likely to make you famous? Well, Chuck opens a chain of karate schools, starts teaching celebrities, because apparently Hollywood discovered that knowing how to fight was useful for, action movies. Students include Steve McQueen, Priscilla Presley, and some guy named Bob Barker. Yes, that Bob Barker. The Price is Right host could apparently throw hands, courtesy of Chuck Norris. File that under things that make perfect sense in retrospect. Now, most martial arts champions might be content with their trophy collection and successful dojo chain. But Chuck Norris looked at Hollywood and thought, you know what this town needs? More roundhouse kicks. Enter Bruce Lee, Way of the Dragon. And here's where Chuck Norris does something that would define his entire career. He loses, spectacularly, on camera, to the most famous martial artist in history. Now, losing to Bruce Lee is like losing a singing contest to Beyoncé. Not exactly career suicide, but most people would maybe try to downplay that whole got destroyed by a legend thing. Chuck Norris? He puts it on his resume. Because getting your ass kicked by Bruce Lee in Rome's Colosseum isn't embarrassing, it's a credential. That one fight scene launched his Hollywood career. Because apparently, casting directors saw a guy who could make fight choreography look believable and thought, we need more of this. The 70s and early 80s become Chuck's film school era. Small roles, B-movies, slowly learning that acting is like martial arts, except with more dialogue and fewer concussions. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. Chuck Norris couldn't exactly act, at all. His dramatic range was somewhere between stoic and slightly more stoic. But here's the genius of 1980s Hollywood. They didn't need him to act. They needed him to look like he could kill everyone in the room while delivering one-liners about justice. Missing in Action drops in 1984, and suddenly Chuck Norris isn't just a martial artist who acts. He's an action star who happens to know martial arts. The difference is subtle but crucial. Stallone and Schwarzenegger had to learn to look tough. Chuck Norris just had to learn to talk while looking tough, which, let's be honest, is like half the work. The early to mid-80s become Chuck's Imperial Phase. Delta Force, Invasion USA, The Octagon, movies where the plot was basically Chuck Norris versus bad guys, and audiences were completely fine with that level of narrative sophistication. But here's what made Chuck different from his muscle-bound contemporaries. He never forgot he was a family man from Oklahoma. While other action stars were cultivating images as unstoppable party machines, Chuck was going home to his wife and kids and probably helping with homework. So, by 1993, Chuck Norris has conquered martial arts, conquered B-movies, and established himself as a reliable supplier of cinematic justice. But then, CBS calls with an offer that will change everything. Hey Chuck, want to be a Texas Ranger on TV? Walker, Texas Ranger premieres, and America discovers something beautiful. Chuck Norris doesn't need big budgets or elaborate plots. He just needs a cowboy hat, a badge, and approximately 47 minutes per episode to kick crime in the face. But here's where it gets weird. And by weird, I mean perfectly Chuck Norris. Walker wasn't just an action show. It was a family action show. Chuck managed to create a program where he could deliver devastating martial arts beatdowns and moral lessons about the importance of staying in school. For 8 seasons, Walker Texas Ranger dominated Saturday night television. Not because it was particularly well written or dramatically complex, but because Chuck Norris had tapped into something primal. America's desire to watch a genuinely decent human being solve problems with precisely applied violence. The show made Chuck a household name in a way movies never could. Suddenly, he wasn't just an action star. He was America's dad, if America's dad happened to be a karate champion who worked in law enforcement. And this is where Chuck's genius becomes apparent. While other celebrities were getting arrested or having public meltdowns, Chuck Norris was out there being aggressively wholesome. Christian values, family man, supports the troops, teaches kids martial arts. He basically became the human embodiment of what people think America should be like. The internet arrives, and with it, a new form of entertainment, people making jokes. And for reasons that still baffle sociologists, the internet looked at Chuck Norris and decided he needed to become a deity. Sometime in the early 2000s, someone on the internet posted something like, "Chuck Norris doesn't sleep, he waits." And apparently, humanity decided this was the funniest thing ever conceived. Chuck Norris facts exploded like something Chuck Norris would explode. And here's the beautiful paradox. By becoming a living joke, Chuck Norris became more famous than he'd ever been as a serious action star. Kids who'd never seen Walker Texas Ranger knew who Chuck Norris was because the internet had appointed him the unofficial ambassador of infinite toughness. But let's step back and appreciate what actually happened here. The internet, this chaotic, cynical, meme-obsessed digital wasteland, looked at Chuck Norris and decided he deserved to be immortal. Not ironically, not sarcastically. They genuinely wanted Chuck Norris to live forever as the ultimate tough guy. And why Chuck? Well, think about it. In an era of manufactured celebrity and PR-managed personas, Chuck Norris was aggressively authentic. He was exactly who he appeared to be. A nice guy from Oklahoma who happened to be really, really good at martial arts and had somehow stumbled into being famous for it. Fast forward to today, Chuck Norris is 85 years old and still basically looks like he could roundhouse kick Father Time into next week. He's written books, runs fitness programs, does charity work, and occasionally shows up to remind people that yes, he's still Chuck Norris. Thanks for watching, and as always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below.